"Hey, Grandma. Think you earned this spot?" The voice, slick with arrogance, cut through the parking lot noise. 68-year-old Eleanor Vance paused, her hand steady on the door of her old Ford F-150. Her prosthetic leg, a functional but aging design, clicked softly as she shifted her weight. A chorus of laughter erupted from a group of young men lounging by a low-slung, neon-green sports car a few spaces away. This parking space, marked "Disabled Veteran," was just the beginning of her ordeal. Eleanor, a retired gunnery sergeant from the United States Marine Corps, surveyed the scene. 20 years of service, a lifetime marked by discipline and the searing heat of Desert Storm where an IED had irrevocably changed her life, had taught her patience. But the sting of disrespect never truly faded. The young men, clad in matching jackets emblazoned with a "Midnight Drivers" logo, preened by their polished machines, engines rumbling impatiently even in park. "Seriously," called out the tallest one, a young man with spiked hair and mirrored sunglasses pushed up his forehead. "My uncle was Army. He said these spots should be for real combat vets, not, you know." He gestured vaguely, his smirk widening as his friends snickered. Shoppers bustled past, a river of indifference. Some cast fleeting glances, a few looked uncomfortable, but most hurried on, caught in their own errands. No one intervened. Eleanor focused on planting her prosthetic firmly on the asphalt. It had taken years of agonizing therapy to walk this steadily, to stand this tall despite the phantom limb that still screamed in the night. She reached into the cab for her sturdy cane, its wooden grip worn smooth from years of use. With practiced movements, she pulled herself upright. She wore simple, sturdy jeans and a plain blue button-down shirt, clothes that spoke of practicality, not vanity. Her silver hair was tied back neatly, and though lines of age and hardship etched her face, her eyes held the unwavering focus of a Marine. "Maybe she got that leg after falling down the stairs," another one jibed, his voice loud enough to carry. More laughter. Eleanor straightened her shoulders, a movement ingrained from decades of drill and discipline. She ignored them, slammed the truck door shut, and began the steady, slightly uneven walk toward the supermarket entrance. Her dignity was her shield, her silence her defiance. Inside the air-conditioned bustle of Global Foods, Eleanor tried to focus. Milk, bread, canned beans. The mundane list was a lifeline, anchoring her to the present, away from the rising tide of anger and old pains. But her hand trembled slightly as she reached for a carton of milk. The bright fluorescent lights hummed, amplifying the dull ache behind her eyes, a persistent echo of the TBI that accompanied her lost limb. She navigated the aisles, her cane tapping a quiet rhythm. Each step was deliberate. She passed the cereal aisle, pausing to lean against a shelf as a wave of dizziness washed over her. Dust. The acrid smell of explosives. The distant thud of mortars. She closed her eyes, breathing deeply. Control. Just control. "Ma'am. Can I help you find anything?" A young stalker, barely out of his teens, looked at her with concern. "Just catching my breath, young man." "Thank you," Eleanor replied, offering a practiced, reassuring smile. She refused his offer to carry her basket. Independence was a fortress she'd fought too hard to build after months confined to hospital beds and wheelchairs. 20 minutes later, basket filled, she pushed through the automatic doors back into the glaring sun. Her stomach clenched. The "Midnight Drivers" hadn't left. Worse, they had moved their cars, effectively bracketing her F-150. The leader, the one with spiked hair, held his phone up, clearly recording her. "Got her," he announced triumphantly to his friends. "Perfect for the Stolen Valor Shame page. Caption this: Grandma Grifter takes a real hero's spot at Valley Mall." His friends cheered. Eleanor felt a cold knot form in her stomach. She'd heard of these online mobs, self-appointed guardians who publicly pilloried anyone they deemed unworthy, often without proof. Her face, her truck, her disability, splashed across the internet for faceless strangers to mock. Objective, reach the vehicle. The old training kicked in. Ignore hostile fire. Focus. She walked forward, her steps unwavering, projecting an air of calm she didn't feel. But as she neared her truck, another figure stepped into her path. It was a mall security guard, a young man named Peterson, swimming in an ill-fitting uniform, his expression a mixture of nervousness and self-importance. "Ma'am," Peterson began, avoiding her gaze. "We've received a complaint. Someone reported you might be, improperly using this disabled veteran parking space." The car club members watched, smirking openly. One of them gave a slow, mocking clap. "Busted," he mouthed. "Officer," Eleanor said, her voice low but firm, "I assure you, my authorization is perfectly valid." She reached into her worn leather purse for her wallet, where she kept her VA ID card and disabled veteran placard documentation alongside her driver's license. "Anyone can buy those things online now," one of the racers called out. "She probably just borrowed it from her dead husband." Peterson flushed, clearly out of his depth and intimidated by the aggressive young men. "Well, ma'am, rules are rules. Could you just show me some additional proof? Maybe your DD 214 or something," he stammered. The world seemed to slow down. Shoppers were now actively stopping to watch. Eleanor felt the familiar heat rise in her cheeks, the burn of humiliation, of having her sacrifice questioned in a public forum. She deliberately pulled out her VA card, which clearly stated, Service-Connected Disability, and USMC. She held it out to Peterson. He took it, examining it with exaggerated care, turning it over and over as if it might be a clever forgery. "This says Marine Corps," he noted, a hint of suspicion in his voice. "But that sticker on your truck, it looks like an old Army one." "My brother served in the Army. It was a gift," Eleanor explained, her voice tight. "I served 15 years in the United States Marine Corps. Gunnery Sergeant. 2 tours in the Gulf, another in Somalia." Peterson looked unconvinced. The racers behind him made faces, rolling their eyes, silently fueling his doubt. "Look, maybe I should just call the VA office to double-check," he suggested, still holding her ID. Just then, Eleanor's eyes met those of a young man hovering at the edge of the crowd. He wore a simple gray t-shirt and jeans, but his haircut was unmistakably military, high and tight. He'd been watching the entire exchange, his face hardening with anger. As Peterson fumbled with his radio, the young man swiftly turned, ducked behind a large SUV, and pulled out his phone. He spoke quickly, his voice low but urgent, before pocketing the phone and melting back towards the mall exit. Eleanor only caught a fragment, "Gunny Vance." "Yes, sir." "Complete disrespect." "That won't be necessary, officer," Eleanor said, her voice regaining its command. "But I understand you believe you're doing your job." She met his eyes, and for a moment, the young guard saw not an old woman, but someone far more formidable. He reluctantly handed back her ID. "Fine," he mumbled. "Just, try not to cause any more disturbances." Eleanor finally reached her truck. The racers revved their engines as she passed, a final act of juvenile defiance. As she settled into the driver's seat, she took a deep breath. She reached into the glove compartment, her hand finding a small, worn wooden box. Inside, nestled on faded velvet, lay her Silver Star, awarded for extraordinary gallantry during an ambush that cost 2 of her young Marines their lives. She didn't take it out. Just knowing it was there was enough. She started the engine, the familiar rumble a small comfort in a world that felt increasingly hostile. 30 minutes ticked by. Eleanor hadn't driven off immediately. She'd needed a moment to compose herself, to let the adrenaline subside. The midnight drivers hadn't left either. They'd moved their flashy cars to block a row near the exit, congregating around a small patch of grass, laughing and boasting, scrolling through their phones. "Dude, the post is blowing up," Spiked Hair exclaimed, holding his phone out. Over 100 shares already. Everyone hates these valor thieves. Check this comment, old lady needs to learn her place, another chimed in, roaring with laughter. The normal rhythm of the mall parking lot flowed around them, a tableau of oblivious consumerism. Then, a new sound intruded, a low, powerful rumble, distinct from the buzzing imports and family sedans. It grew steadily louder. 3 imposing, dark gray Chevrolet Suburbans turned into the main entrance, moving with a slow, deliberate purpose that commanded attention. They didn't search for spots, they drove in perfect formation down the central aisle, their tinted windows reflecting the afternoon sun. They came to a synchronized halt, forming an impenetrable line directly blocking the parking lot exit, and trapping the midnight drivers. Silence began to fall. Shoppers paused, their conversations dying. Phones, previously used for texting and browse, now turned outwards, recording. The doors of the Suburbans opened in unison. 8 figures emerged, stepping onto the asphalt with a precision that was almost unnerving. They were United States Marines. In full dress blues. The sunlight glinted off polished brass buttons, sharp white gloves, and rows of colorful service ribbons that told stories of distant shores and hard-won battles. They moved as one, forming a perfect line, their backs ramrod straight, their faces impassive but radiating an intensity that chilled the air. They stood facing the now silent group of young men. From the lead vehicle stepped a master gunnery sergeant. He was a man carved from granite and experience, his face a roadmap of command, his chest a testament to decades of service. He strode forward, his footsteps echoing in the sudden hush. His eyes swept over the bewildered crowd, finally locking onto the midnight drivers, who now looked less like kings of the road and more like schoolboys caught misbehaving. Gunnery Sergeant Eleanor Vance, the master gunnery sergeant's voice boomed across the lot, each word clear and sharp. United States Marine Corps, retired. Recipient of the Silver Star for gallantry in action. Recipient of the Purple Heart with 2 gold stars. 15 years of honorable service. Wounded while leading her Marines under fire during Operation Desert Storm. He paused, letting the weight of his words sink in. She earned that parking spot. She earned your respect. Today, you gave her neither. The midnight drivers stood frozen, their cocky attitudes evaporated. They exchanged panicked glances, trapped between the silent, imposing line of Marines and a suddenly judgmental crowd. From the line of Marines, a younger captain stepped forward. He walked directly to the now trembling security guard, Peterson, who had emerged from the mall to see what the commotion was about. "Officer," the captain said, his voice quiet but carrying immense weight. "We understand you questioned the service record of Gunnery Sergeant Vance." Peterson swallowed hard. There was a complaint, sir." "A complaint based on ignorance," the captain stated flatly. "Gunnery Sergeant Vance isn't just a veteran, she's a legend. She trained hundreds of Marines. She saved lives. She is the core." Just then, another figure emerged from one of the Suburbans. It was the young man with the military haircut, now identifiable as a Marine Corporal, Michael Chin. He strode to the master gunnery sergeant's side. "Gunny Vance was my senior drill instructor," he announced, his voice ringing with pride. "She taught me everything I know about honor. When I saw what was happening, I called my old CO." And then, Eleanor Vance herself approached. She'd been contacted, asked to return. She walked slowly, her cane tapping, her head held high. As she reached the formation, the master gunnery sergeant barked, a 10 HUT. All 8 Marines snapped to attention. Present. Arms. 8 white-gloved hands executed a flawless salute. The crowd watched, mesmerized. Some people wiped tears from their eyes. An elderly man wearing a VFW cap struggled to his feet and offered his own shaky salute. Eleanor, with practiced military precision, returned the salute. The master gunnery sergeant turned his gaze back to the car club members. "You. Stand up. apologized to the gunnery sergeant. Hesitantly, the 5 young men scrambled to their feet. Spiked Hair stepped forward, his eyes glued to the asphalt. "Ma'am, Gunny. We're sorry. We were stupid. We apologize." The others mumbled their agreement. Eleanor looked at them, her expression unreadable. Then, she did something no one expected. She reached into her pocket, not for a medal, but for a small, folded photo. It was old and creased. "This," she said, her voice clear and strong, "was Lance Corporal Ramirez. And this was PFC Jones. They didn't make it home from that ambush." She looked directly at the young men. "I don't need your apology. But they deserve your respect. Remember that. Remember that the price of freedom is paid by real people, with real wounds, both the ones you see," she gestured to her leg, "and the ones you don't." The impact of her words was immediate. The young men stood, heads bowed, their bravado completely shattered. Peterson, the security guard, stepped forward, his hat clutched in his hand. "Gunnery Sergeant," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "I am deeply sorry. There's no excuse for my behavior. Thank you for your service." Eleanor looked at him, and the hardness in her eyes softened. "You're young," she said gently. "Learn from this. See people, not just uniforms or disabilities." The crowd began to disperse, but many approached Eleanor first. An older woman grasped her hand, tears in her eyes. "My son served," she whispered. "Thank you." A father pushed his young son forward. "Shake her hand, son. This is a real American hero." The Marines prepared to leave. The Master Gunnery Sergeant gave Eleanor a nod. "We take care of our own, Gunny. Always." "Semper Fi," Eleanor replied, a ghost of a smile touching her lips. As the Suburbans pulled away, the leader of the car club, Spiked Hair, approached Eleanor again, alone this time. "My name's Rick," he said quietly. My grandpa was Vietnam. He never talked about it. Just drank. I guess I grew up, angry. Confused." He looked up, his eyes filled with genuine remorse. "I deleted the post. I posted an apology. Told everyone what really happened. It's not much, but..." Eleanor nodded slowly. "It's a start, Rick. It's a start." Before she could leave, the mall manager rushed out, full of apologies and offers. "We'd like to make this right, Gunnery Sergeant," he insisted. The story exploded online, but this time, it was the real story. Cell phone videos of the Marines saluting Eleanor went viral. The hashtags #RespectOurVets and #GunnyVance trended for days. The comments poured in, "This is what honor looks like." Brought tears to my eyes. "Thank you, Marines. My mom's a vet and faces this stuff too. We need to do better." The next time Eleanor visited the mall, a brand new sign stood proudly at her preferred parking spot. It read, "Reserved, Gunnery Sergeant E. Vance, USMC, with gratitude." As she got out, a little girl offered her a crayon drawing of a Marine. "My mom says you're brave," the girl whispered. Eleanor knelt, wincing slightly. Being brave, she told the girl, mostly means just keep going, even when you're scared or hurt. The incident sparked real change. The mall implemented mandatory sensitivity training for its staff. The local VA chapter launched an awareness campaign about invisible wounds and the diversity of veterans. Rick, the car club leader, became a dedicated volunteer at the VA hospital, often seen pushing wheelchairs or just listening to stories. Eleanor was even invited to speak at the local high school's Veterans Day assembly. She shared her story, not just the heroics, but the hard, quiet battles of recovery and readjustment. "Service doesn't end when you take off the uniform," she told the students. "And respect isn't something reserved for parades. It's something we owe each other, every single day." Months later, sitting on her porch, Eleanor watched the sunset. She no longer felt the constant need to prove herself. She felt seen. Not as a hero or a victim, but as a Marine, a woman, a survivor who had served with honor. The silence of the parking lot had been broken, not just by the arrival of 8 Marines, but by a community finding its voice, remembering the true meaning of respect. What do you think? Have you ever witnessed someone being judged unfairly based on their appearance? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and please, always comment with respect. It's crucial we learn to see the honor that walks among us, often unseen. Subscribe to QH Incredible Stories for more powerful moments where courage finds its voice.